All right. Good evening, everyone. I will now call to order this meeting of the Crime and Gun Violence Prevention Task Force. Thank you all for being here tonight. I will now ask Ms. Matthews to call the roll.
Starting with Mr. Swenson, please state your name.
Eugene Swenson.
Keith Rice.
Sheree Patillo.
Jalen Drury.
Leticia Sessoms.
James Cullen.
Sarah Ray.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Matthews. You all have received a copy of the minutes from our February 3rd meeting. If there are no corrections, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. You have also received a copy of tonight's agenda. If there aren't any changes, can I have a motion to adopt tonight's agenda?
Motion to adopt as written.
All right, you have a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. All right, tonight we will hear from several presenters who will provide key information regarding crime prevention strategies here in Portsmouth that have been developed, also economic opportunities through Portsmouth at Work, and public health approaches to addressing crime and gun violence prevention strategies here in our city. As mentioned in our last meeting, these presentations will help guide our work going forward and our discussions as we work towards ending crime and gun violence in our town. I'll start by inviting Chief Magnabat up to share insights from the Harvard Bloomberg study that was done a few years ago, and afterwards we'll have discussions about its implications here in Portsmouth.
Good evening, Chairman Drury, Vice Chair Ms. Patillo, and members of the Commission. Really want to just give a quick overview of a Bloomberg Harvard initiative that the city and city staff undertook about, started late 2021, but the team was formed in early 2022. The good thing about the presentation is where Mr. Pomachuk comes up to talk about our findings. It's a place where we leave off with some recommendations, and these recommendations through our research have been vetted, especially through the Bloomberg Harvard organization, to be some of the next steps to take place for the city. So we believe that it's something that will come forward as almost delivered on a platter for you all, and hopefully in partnership with the police department that we can work through and get some of these projects moving forward. So with that, I'll start with a quick brief over how the team was formed. So really the city was selected to assist with identifying strategies with combating crime and prioritizing these efforts. So these bring potential resources from the Bloomberg Harvard Group. They really provided a high impact experience for city leaders. It was a multifaceted approach to crime reduction, and it's also a track of 3 that we selected the innovation track. So the innovation track was our team was had the ability to think outside the box, be more effective in tackling challenges, problems, putting residents at the center, and also designing and testing new ideas. And it's something where we were able to get some data together and put forward the recommendations. So with that, I'm going to move forward. So we had a core team, and the core team is pretty much there except for the one top position that we have who no longer works here in Portsmouth. But we had the departments such as Behavioral Health Care Services, Parks and Recreation, the Police Department, Waste Management, the City Manager's Office, Fire and EMS, the Library System, PRHA, Portsmouth Public Schools, and the Sheriff's Office. So within this group, we had an innovation team lead, which Dr. Woodard at the time was leading us with this. Parks and Recreation, Mr. Pomerchuk, he was a project manager in this project. The learning lead was identified through the police department, and that was Captain Rusty Venners. The learning lead was the fixture where everything that was learned in our education through Bloomberg and Harvard, we wanted the police department to have the focus on how to identify these community needs. The last position that was a lead position was through Waste Management, and we had Ms. Mary Watson as our Equity and Community Engagement Lead. She was super proficient with getting the community together with a lot of city cleanups, and she was identified to help us reach out into the community with that. So our goals were to really build a high-performing team. We learned virtual lessons. It was a 10-month learning program, and we followed pretty much a playbook with a coach from Bloomberg Harvard organization. So really, it was designed with innovation. Some of the old format, and I'll just run through the top one, where it was our residents talk to us or write to us. We use a design-based innovation process. We wanted to proactively engage our constituents. And as we ran down through this change in mindset, we knew that when we were trying to start with solutions, we really needed to start with the true questions on what the community needed. And we'll run through that when Mark comes up to speak. So this is the playbook that we used, and it's basically like a planning cycle. So we had to understand the problem. We had to generate ideas so we understood the problem, and then deliver an outcome, right? And we will end our presentation with a delivery of an outcome or two outcomes that is recommended from our team. So as I said, we spent 10 months learning and making sure that our mindset didn't overtake with some of our behaviors as a group, making sure we didn't have a group think and assuming what was actually the output of our findings. So we just took a step at identification, creation, prioritization, and just the inspiration from when we met with the community. So we had a few benefits from the design-based innovation, and those are listed here. And so where I'll turn it over to Mark is we as a group framed the problem, right? And we went through many iterations of making sure that we understood what the community needs were when it came to identifying the violent crimes in the city. Most particular was through the gun violence. So I'll let Mark take over because he's the one that was our project lead, and he was able to work with us in getting the stakeholders and can provide you with the format on how we were able to come down with our solutions. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you, Chief Nestor. It really was a team effort, though. Project manager really is just trying to make sure that everyone's moving in the same direction, right? We can all be good individually, but we're so much better when we work collectively in the same direction. So some of our chosen stakeholders were where some of the issues were taking place with middle school boys. And we didn't just talk to middle school boys, we also talked to middle school girls as well, and then high school boys and girls. But we focused more on middle school boys because at the time, that's who was committing a lot of the crimes. In addition to that, we spoke to the parents of a lot of middle schoolers and high schoolers. And then lastly, teachers who are interacting with the children every day. They see some of the interaction that we don't get to see being in the classroom. So it's a very different and unique perspective on what issues they're dealing with. In addition to that, there were also discussions with community members. Some of you sitting on the dais right now were actually part of those discussions. And then others doing similar work in the community, some different nonprofits. When we started out, we did a 3-week research sprint, which it might not sound like much doing it in 3 weeks, but a team of roughly 15 people going out, doing 14 different stakeholder interviews. We did 12 stakeholder observations where we were just observing children in their natural environments just to see how that interaction took place. And then additionally, 16 literature reviews. And it wasn't just going to Google and Googling youth violence, right? Like these are peer-reviewed journals that we were reviewing. From that, the team did gain a lot of insight from personal experiences that the youth were dealing with on a daily basis. Some include the parents who were too afraid to let their kids outside because of what was going on in their communities. Some were from the teachers who were regularly diffusing violent situations in the classrooms. And then again, the youth who many believed they were stuck, that they had no opportunity other than to do the things that they were seeing in their communities. And Captain Ventures, if you can please play the second one from the top. Oh.
I'm not understanding that. Like, my kids literally be in their feelings because I don't want them to go outside. And it's not because I don't want them to. They're kids. They're supposed to be able to enjoy.
It's okay, bear with us.
I'm not understanding that. Like, my kids literally be in their feelings because I don't want them to go outside. And it's not because I don't want them to. They're kids. They're supposed to be able to enjoy being outside, enjoy being a teenager, adolescent, but I just don't feel safe with sending my kids outside then.
Okay, and this next one I'm going to ask you to play, but before you do, Captain Venters, you're going to be able to tell this was read by someone, right? They're reading a script. The reason for that is because the youth that gave us this information, they didn't want to be on camera. They didn't want to be recorded. They feared retaliation. Okay.
It's hard to be a kid in this city. I can't go outside because violence is everywhere. When you live in a community, if you come outside and something goes down, you have to participate, and if you don't, they will get you.
Okay, and those were just a few of the excerpts from some of our interviews, but we would see that overarching theme come up again and again, with just about every interview we had. All right, so we then had to reframe the problem, and I know you're probably thinking, well, we know what the problem was. The problem is youth violence. That's the overarching issue, but we really needed to narrow down our focus. If you try to take on something like that in a vacuum, there's just too many options. There's too many ways that you can go, and it does become overwhelming. So we reframed our problem, and we went with 2 different problems. So problem was, sorry, I should have brought my glasses. Parents in some neighborhoods are afraid for the safety of their children. It's a problem for the children of Portsmouth, of course. And then some children in Portsmouth have less opportunities to make diverse friends and actually have opportunities that other kids that they go to school with would have. Second problem we came up with was that we do not know what our youth want to see in programs and activities in the city. Children, parents, and communities and teachers are who that problem is for. And then the children will not attend these programs. 1, they don't know about them. 2, they are afraid to come out of their house and actually get to these programs. So it becomes a problem not only for the kids, but for their parents, for anyone in the community that sees these things going on. And just real quickly, when we're talking about themes and creating themes, really that's just taking data that we found in our research, connecting the dots, and coming up with the actual theme. So our next step after creating these themes was more research, some additional co-design workshops with the community, and those looked more like a giant brain dump, right? We'd have hundreds and thousands of ideas at these meetings, and trying to fit them into certain themes where we see these same similar issues going on. This is just one of the screens from our Miro board, which is an online whiteboard, basically allowing you to put sticky notes, if you will, ideas, anything that is going to tie issues together to where it does create that common theme. And we saw reoccurring elements during several of these themes and highlighted 3 of them that we basically saw in just about all of them. One was a need for youth skills. 2 was the need for positive outlets and safe places. And then the 3rd was a positive adult role models. Okay. And with those observed themes, again, we had the data, and then you do what is called creating insights. So what we developed based on the research data was 4 different insights. Insight 1 was that parents were concerned about their children's safety in some neighborhoods in Portsmouth. One parent said in the interview that her fear is trying to provide activities for her kids while worrying about their safety. The dilemma it causes is that children are made to come home directly after school and then don't get to interact outside. When they stay in the house, they become disconnected and have even fewer opportunities to try new things, make something of themselves. And then this impact is that it limits the interaction with other kids, it limits their interaction with positive adult role models, and it's a negative cycle that repeats itself. The second insight we focused on was that children have a lack of skills or know-how to express their feelings in the correct way. It leads to impulsive decisions and choices, a lot of times fighting. Teachers would say that that's the only tool these kids have in their toolbox, so that's what they're going to rely on. Okay. The dilemma is that they feel the need to prove themselves. So when they're in school, something goes down, they can't back down because they're afraid it's going to make them appear weak. And then the impact that has is that small problems can quickly escalate and a lot of times into violent situations. Insight 3 was that citizens were becoming desensitized to violence. They saw it a lot, daily sometimes in some communities. That dilemma that it caused was that it would make them feel hopeless or helpless, and they were afraid to come out in their community and participate in community activities. And then that led to a lack of sense of security and became further isolated, again, causing that negative cycle. The 4th and final insight that we landed on was we noticed a lot of older brothers and sisters taking care of their younger siblings. Not only, a lot of times you'll see grandparents taking care of the younger children, the parents aren't in the picture with being at work, working multiple jobs, whatever the case may be, but we also saw children doing it. The difference there is that children do not know how to parent, right? They're still learning that from their own parents. So the dilemma it caused was that they felt overwhelmed, they felt scared, they felt like they didn't know what to do. And the impact that it created was that they would find protection in older youth in their communities. And a lot of those older youth in the communities were doing the things we're trying to keep them away from, right? Getting involved in gangs, getting involved in criminal activity. And then that, though, was their only sense of family. So it creates a huge impact. All right. We, after taking these insights, were asked to develop ideas or prototypes, something tangible that we could move forward with. And this is, we'll come back to this a little bit later in the presentation, but these are the things that we're hoping to leave you all with as possible options for the commission to take on. Two different ideas. We split into 2 groups. One group developed youth skills training. This was done with children, right? It wasn't just the adults saying, hey, here's what you need to do. We got their ideas and feedback to see what is it that they truly would like to see, what would they like to develop in themselves. And then the second one was a community feedback and event app. The idea behind this is a lot of times parents will say, kids will say, well, we don't know what's going on in the community. We don't know what programs are out there. So the idea was, let's have everything in the city in one place, not just city programs, church programs, nonprofit programs. Whoever is doing something in the city would be able to post to this app and have links to it for registrations, have links to it for youth jobs. That way, you don't have to go searching. You know where it is. So some of the key takeaways from those idea sessions was that the residents, especially the parents, need help finding good resources and information. The youth, when they were given the opportunity to be involved, they jumped at the chance. I remember after meeting with a few of them at Lakeview Elementary and at Waters Middle, they were asking us, well, how are we going to know if you're going to use our ideas? I mean, they were truly, truly excited. And then the last key takeaway we had there was that if we change the crime in our community, we must be willing to change ourselves. So lessons learned. Innovation requires a change in mindset, right? That is key, is a change in mindset. Not only for the people who are involved with dealing with the crime every day, but also the people, us, who have a chance to make that change. Right? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Okay, we have to change our mindset. Second lesson learned is that you have to truly engage your residents, your business owners, your property owners, your citizens. You cannot just expect that a survey is going to give you the information you need. You have to go out to where they are, meet them where they're at, and engage them, get their ideas, and use them. You have to test them. And then lastly was that you can't just do this one time. You can't just do this 2 times. You have to implement this into your daily activities. Okay? Being proactive versus being responsive. Being responsive is great, right? I mean, you're handling an issue. But if you can be proactive, you're getting in front of that issue. So next steps that we had developed as a core team were to, one, with the youth skills training program, to really kind of develop that, find partners in the community that we could, partner with to develop these things. And we have some outcomes out of this already. Some examples are the Youth Fire Academy, the Portsmouth Police Athletic League, the PPS CTE program, Career and Technical Education program that's coming about. In Parks and Recreation, we implemented what we call Schoolhouse Rec. So we're going out to those communities and partnering with the schools where we do not have brick and mortar facilities. And then we also have instructional programs. We're partnering with nonprofits to be able to provide some of the skills training that the kids are wanting to see. The next steps that we developed for the online app was to fine-tune the design, which still has not been totally completed because that would need the help of actual app developers, which we are not. Chief Nestor and I have reached out to a few of them and have just kind of given them an idea of what we're looking for, and they're waiting on us right now. They're ready to go. So that is something that can be done fairly quickly. The thing we need to work on with this one, though, is how to vet that process. If we're allowing other groups to post whatever activities they're doing, we have to make sure that the ones that we want to have the city's stamp of approval on, correct? Right? So we need that process. What's that going to look like? Who's going to be involved? Who's going to make sure that they maintain everything on there, that old stuff comes off, new stuff gets on. So that's another item that could be done. And then lastly, I just want to mention that this is a framework. When we went through this process, it was to teach us the actual innovation process, right? So many times our coach would tell us it's not about the outcome that you want. For us it was. I mean, we put a lot of time and energy to it, and we wanted to see positive change. But it was to learn the process so you can repeat it over and over again and apply it to whatever issue that you're having. Okay, so make sure we have guiding principles, make sure we have subcommittees, 1, 3, 5-year goals, whatever the case may be. But it would be a call to action to really develop some of these things. And then I would leave you lastly with Chattanooga, Tennessee. They were in the program the same time we were, and they had the exact same issue. They were dealing with youth violence. So going to their website, seeing what they have done as well would be another good resource. Granted, they're about double the population that Portsmouth is, but there are still a lot of similarities. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Commissioners, do you have any questions? All right, not seeing any at the moment.
Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you for the presentation. Thank you. All right, next we will hear from Ms. Sonia Briggs, who will present on Portsmouth at Work.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Sonja Briggs. I'm the employment specialist at the Portsmouth at Work Center. The City of Portsmouth has a workforce development that offers pathways to employment. One of the pathways that we have is education and training programs that we offer residents of Portsmouth. Array of training such as CDL, healthcare, like medical assistant, medical administrative assistant, phlebotomy, merchant seaman, the boot camp, in order to be able to get their MMC credentialing. We also partner with different organizations such as Neighborhood, which is located in Chesapeake. We will refer students to their training programs. We also partner with Tidewater Community College and the Skilled Trade Academy to be able to offer trades such as welding, marine coating, ship fitting, electrical, plumbing, carpentry, and can't think of all of those, building maintenance, and also the maritime skill trades. What we typically do, and here we'll pull up the website in just a moment, we'll refer residents to the website where they can kind of see what is available at that time, and they can just register themselves in whichever training program that they're interested in. We also have a pathway that is career readiness, where we assist residents with their resumes, interviewing techniques, and any type of soft skills that may be needed to prepare for interviews and job opportunities that they may have, some job searching, different things of that sort. We have coming up 4 events. I provided you with 2 of the flyers because the other 2 flyers are not available just yet, but once they become available, I'll either email them to you or I'll come back to the meeting next month to provide you with those events. The first event is going to be on Tuesday, March the 18th from 10 a.m. until 2 p.m. at TCC Portsmouth campus and their student center. We're going to have a hiring event. That's the Career Connect Fest for adults, where employers from various industries will be there promoting their available positions to not only the community of Portsmouth, but anybody who is interested in attending that event. And then we will have our Youth Career Connect Fest, and the Career Connect Fest that is in partnership with the Urban League of Hampton Roads. The next event with the Youth Career Connect Fest, that's going to just focus on ages 15 and 6 months, able to get a work permit to the age of 21. And that's in partnership with Big Homies and Cuts YEP to be able to offer the youth of Portsmouth opportunities. Employers will be there to give them such as the military recruiters will be there, again, TCC Skilled Trades, and other employers that have noted that they can hire within that age range will be there promoting their available positions to the youth of Portsmouth. And the other 2 events are community resource events. So they're going to be on They're going to be on Wednesday, April the 23rd, and Wednesday, April the 30th, from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. On April the 23rd, we're going to take community resources into the Port Norfolk community. We'll be at Fountain Park, providing all of the residents that live in Port Norfolk with various types of resources that are offered throughout the community. Some residents may say they don't have transportation to get to certain resources, so all of those resources will be housed in one location to be able to provide some of the services that the community members may need. On Wednesday, April the 30th, we will be in the Lexington Place Dale Home community, same, providing the community resources that they may be in need of at that time. So just various opportunities for residents to either gain employment or upskill their employment. If that is their goal, we will assist them in any way. I didn't provide you with my cards, but I'll leave my business card as well if you all need to email me. I might be sending out the information to be able to register for any of those events. If you know of employers that may be interested, there's still some space available. If you have any ideas or you want to work with us or partner with us in any way, we would be happy to take your feedback or your information and work with you.
Thank you, Ms. Briggs. I have a question. Have you found it hard to get youth that are straight out of high school engaged in these services and involved in the programs?
The only reason why would be maybe because they don't know about it. We do partner with Portsmouth Public Schools, like Mr. Palmerchuk was stating, their CTE, Career and Technology Education Training, trying to, it's called Hire Our Grads, efforts to be able to get the students employed in the jobs that they're actually going to school with. But even if they can't get jobs in those trainings, at least to have a job opportunity by the time that they leave or graduate. So that's what we are currently doing now. We did a little bit of career readiness and tours for the January graduates, and we just did some industry tours with Crofton, the Shipyard, and Links Industries to show them various types of careers that could be available to them once they were to graduate, or even now if they go ahead and complete the applications. But yes, only mainly because they may not know of all of the opportunities that are available to them. But once we typically start working with them, they would be interested. I think a lot of them want to do like the merchant seaman, so we can go ahead and get them started with that process to be able to get those credentials.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Sir.
Good evening, Ms. Briggs.
Good evening.
When you mentioned that you're going to be going into Port Norfolk, Dale Homes, who do you work with to set that up in advance, to make notifications to the neighborhood and to try to get the word out there?
So for Port Norfolk, I went to their Civic League meeting to let them know. They do newsletters and things like that. So as soon as I have that promotional material, I'll email it to them. I already let them know the dates that we will be out, but I'll email them to there and go back to their meeting to make sure that they know. It'll be advertised like a local like bulletin board and community partners and things like that to share. With the Housing Authority, the same. They'll do newsletters and things to their residents. So the flyer will go out to them in April in preparation for that event. And same, it will be posted on billboards and provided to community partners as well.
Yeah, that answered my second question, which was going to be, what do you do in places where there are no civic leagues?
Yes, anything that we can think of doing, we will try to get the word out to the residents to make sure. Last when we were out in Prentice, we even knocked on some doors and passed out flyers to the community. So if I see that it's not getting a lot of traction, I'll go out a couple days before to let the residents know we'll be out.
And then at those types of meetings or those gatherings, is there any kind of mechanism, any sort of a formal mechanism to try to gather whatever feedback you're getting from the community and apply it, or to give it to other agencies within the city, other departments within the city? Is there anything that's in place? Only because it was discussed in this most recent presentation that that's one of the biggest things we want to do, is try to shift toward the proactive and getting as much data from stakeholders as possible. I'm just curious if there's, as people come up and talk to you, what is in place now to do with that information?
What we're going to try to do with the events that we're having in April is with the Virginia Department of Health. They have a Healthy Heart initiative, and we also serve like food at those events. So maybe when they go to take their ticket, or before they get a ticket to get their meal, then we can give them a quick survey that we can kind of look over to see which resources did they feel were very helpful, or do they need or felt like we didn't provide to them. So just to be able to kind of review that information so that for the next events that we put together, we will make those adjustments. But in the past, we had not really, I think most of the feedback was, again, not knowing, not a lot of people, the timing of it, where we're trying to balance a work day for most of the vendors, as well as the kids being out of school, so some timing issues. But I made a little adjustment on the time for these events.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Are there any other questions? Okay.
It's not really a question. Hey, Ms. Briggs,
Hey, hello.
I wanted you to kind of speak to them about the challenges of this age group, because I know he spoke about getting the kids employed when they graduate. But, you know, me and you talked about this 15 and a half to 21, the challenges when trying to hire them or keeping them employed, like what they lack.
Absolutely. With youth between the ages of 15 and 6 months that are able to get a work permit, and I'll say to 18, various things, like Mr. Palmer was talking about, the skills to be able to maintain employment. So you have transportation, you have so many things that are going on in the household where their attention is probably elsewhere, not focused on employment. The maturity level could be it, not having a proper attire if they're not in uniform jobs. Some of them don't see the benefit. They may feel like they can make more money if they're doing things that are on the street as opposed to just working, the few hours that they can work. If they're on a work permit or they're not able to work full time, they still have to go to school and be home by a certain time. So there are lots of challenges, just basic soft skills with how to work with customers and present themselves and speak in a manner that is approachable and things like that. Like a lot of correlation with the conflict resolution and things of that sort. So the challenges are many. You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Briggs.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Now we will hear from Mr. Dwight Richardson from the Portsmouth Health Department.
Again, my name is Dwight Richards. I'm with the Portsmouth Health Department, and I have been in the city now for several years. I've been in this position now for the past couple of years. And certainly the work that we do in public health, oftentimes people see it as being just around health or health-related matters, but we don't always see all of the different facets of what public health is. So a part of what we are doing in public health as it pertains to crime and youth violence and all of that is actually taking a very holistic approach so that we are looking at it in a very non-traditional way. You've heard a little bit from the Bloomberg-Harvard study that was done a few years ago, and that aligns very well with what public health is doing and how we are trying to address some of those problems. So just looking at our most recent community health assessment that was done within the past few years, what we've actually seen, and this is the latest data from this actually dates into 2022, right around the same time that the Bloomberg study was taking place, we found that the rates of offenses for Group A type offenses, that's all of your pretty much criminal activities that take place, among our youth was really not much different than it is in so many different urban areas. What is unique about this is that Portsmouth actually had consistently a higher number of incidences compared to the rest of the Hampton Roads cities. So certainly that actually, when you look at it on a per capita basis, it forces us to actually take a look to see why is that happening. Yes, our rates started trending down, and you'll see as we get into the next slide that it actually, for some rates, that they were actually very much the same as it was for the rest of Hampton Roads. But what we had going on during that time was also COVID. So when you look at what was happening, particularly inside of the schools, when schools all closed down because of that national emergency, all of a sudden the kids were no longer in the classroom, they were no longer in the community, and now all of the numbers looked the same. Now, because we do these studies oftentimes in looking backwards, we've not had the chance to actually collect the data to assess to see where we are. So it looks as if as of 2021, we've solved all the problems, and therefore nothing is happening. We don't need this commission or anything else. I wish that were true, but it is not. So the trend is, went down between 2018 and 2021. I'm almost excited to see what the trends are since the pandemic, even though I know that it's not going to look like this. The numbers are going to increase, and we are going to see what is truly happening in that next cycle that we do. So some of the findings from the community health assessment is that when we adjusted for age, looking at what youth was doing, we start seeing increases in either homicides, suicides, or self-harm. And that becomes very, very disturbing. So certainly it is something that we, again, have to contend with. How do we address these issues in a way that actually is useful and doesn't perpetuate the problem? So in order for us to do that, we started looking at what the national models were telling us. What are the things, where are we going from a public health approach? What are the things that we need to do that are going to actually have local impact? It's wonderful for us to say, let's fix Portsmouth, but in order for us to be able to fix what's happening in Portsmouth, we also have to appreciate what is actually happening globally. Because people don't just always stay here, and they're influenced by the things that are happening outside of here, even if they have not left the area. So looking at the CDC and the HHS recommendations, we look at what we call Healthy People 2030 objectives. And among those objectives that we actually use to inform our actions going forward is to look at, by the year 2030, where should we be? What do we want to accomplish as an agency, and for the larger VDH, as a state? So the goals of HP 2030 is to reduce the proportion of public schools with serious violent incidents. Another goal is to reduce the rate of minors and young adults that are committing violent crimes, as well as to reduce the rate of adolescent and young adult victimization from violent crimes, as well as to increase the number of states where a child fatality team reviews sudden and unexpected deaths in infant. Well, I'm proud to say that here in Virginia, we have been doing that, and we have really gotten a good understanding of what infant mortality is, what it looks like, and what the contributors are. So that is ongoing work that predates this study, but it's something that we are continuing to do to meet these objectives, to make sure that we have a full understanding, and not just to look at it within that first or second year of life, but to even to look at it into the toddler and youth ages as well. And of course, finally, is to also reduce the number of adults who report 3 or more adverse childhood experiences. Now, a part of what we know from adverse childhood experiences is that we are all a product of those experiences, good as well as bad. And it helps to inform what youth experience in the household. So what these studies have actually told us is that a child who has grown up with an adult who has had 3 or more adverse childhood experiences are at actually higher risk of experiencing adverse childhood experiences and the subsequent outcomes as well. So those are among the things that we're looking at from the national level. Now, in order for us to then hone where we need to look at this in a more holistic approach, as opposed to looking at it as just a singular problem or a singular set of problems, it's important for us to understand what are the things that actually contribute to good outcomes, good health outcomes, good economic outcomes. So from this model, this is what we call our social determinants of health. It looks at economic stability. Are people employed? Do they have income coming in to be able to provide those services and resources? We look at education access and quality. Are they getting at least a good basic education in order to gain employment? So that becomes a part of what we need to look at as well. How about healthcare access? Do they have access to healthcare? Now, there are programs out there that have actually attempted to create what is not universal health care, but at least access to at least basic health care. And that has not gone without meeting some challenges along the way, but it is still an area that still can be improved. As well as the neighborhood and the built environment. From the Bloomberg study, you've heard about blight in neighborhoods and how that has contributed to crime. That is actually what is addressed in that area, as well as the social and the community context. Having a good, effective support system certainly plays an important role in people's outcome. So I'm not going to read all of this, but from quick overview from this economic stability, it's again reduce the number of people living in poverty, increase employment. From education, it's increased proportion of high schoolers who graduate on time. Health access has increased the proportion of people who with substance use and disorder who gets treatment. It's one thing to incarcerate them. Yes, while they're incarcerated, they are no longer using. What happens when they get released? And that's where we see a lot of overdose injuries and overdose deaths that have actually taken place. The neighborhood and the built environment has reduced the rate of minors and young adults who are committing violent crimes. Blight in the community contributes to crime taking place in the community. And of course, to reduce anxiety and depression in family caregivers for people with disabilities. So that's a social and community context. So all of this actually come together in order to create the environment that contribute to the outcomes that we want to change. Now, just a recap of what you saw from the Bloomberg. They look at what happens before the crimes take place. Grassroots organizations are the powerhouse for prevention. When communities are working together, you're putting those resources in place that will help people to deter away from crime. When they are not there, it creates opportunity for crime to take effect. And of course, how do you address it? Well, you have to take an interdepartmental and intersectoral commitment in order to address it. One of the recommendations under the Bloomberg included a public health approach, which is where we come in. So built into our community health improvement plan that is running from between 2025 through 2029 are actually several different things. We are looking at 5 different pillars. We're looking largely at mental health and the role that mental health disorders play in the contribution towards crime. We're looking at chronic diseases. That is around healthcare access. When people have easy access or effective access to healthcare, they're able to control those chronic diseases and therefore experience better health outcomes that sometimes can cause financial burdens on families. We're looking at substance and tobacco use and the health effects that come from those. We're looking at violence, injuries, and deaths, as well as we're looking at prevention behaviors. Prevention behaviors lead to those things that are communicable diseases, but also non-communicable diseases, and also contribute to some of the violent crimes that we see among both youth as well as adults. So those are the areas that we are focusing on. Very specifically, where it comes down to violence and injuries, we are looking at how do we reduce incidences of youth violence. How do we get them engaged in order to change the mindset that contribute to the problems? One of the things that we're looking at is actually a hospital-based violence intervention program. And what that involves is that if an individual was actually involved in a criminal activity, particularly as a victim, while they are in the hospital, is to start that intervention to help them to get away from that situation, get away from that, sometimes that community. And of course, I am pleased to have learned very recently that there are in fact some efforts that are being taken place in the city to help people to relocate or to change the environment. So that is a part of the work that we are going to continue to do, to continue to connect with those hospital resources that already have this in place and to leverage that to be able to help our citizens here in our city. We also want to make sure we're reducing the incidences of gun violence among adults and adolescents, as well as integrate community violence prevention and intervention strategies that engage public safety, public health, victim services, community-based organizations, and individuals. So essentially, we are not afraid, and we welcome talking to anyone and everyone that is willing to work with us and we with them in order to address these issues. These are not singular issues in any way. Now, one of the programs that we started offering in 2018 and into 2019, it was a teen outreach program. And what that is, it's really about giving youth and giving young people, young adults, the skills that are necessary to deal with a lot of the challenges that they deal with on a daily basis. Unfortunately, because of COVID, our program, as were all public health programs, got suspended, and therefore that is a program that is currently on hold. We would love to be able to get that restarted. Unfortunately, with the current climate that is taking place across our country from Washington to Richmond and the impact here, we don't know if the funding will be there, but it is certainly something that we are interested in actually having a deeper conversation around to be able to actually see how we can bring that program back into Portsmouth. The group that we took through that program in that first year, they were able to actually start getting connected in their communities. We worked out of a community over on Bird Lane, a rental community over in Bird Lane. And it was awesome to see what happened when we first started and after that school year, how connected they were and started actually contributing back into their community in creating safety within the community. So it's a program that we know that works. It is actually a nationally recognized evidence-based program. So again, I'd love to be able to talk a little bit deeper. But until then, one of the things that we are doing right now is that we are partnering with the youth serving organizations. We've recently joined Portsmouth United. We talk a lot with our faith-based organizations. We talk a lot with our community-based organizations. And of course, as I said, I'm willing to talk to anyone who is willing to listen and to understand how public health can come alongside and to work with them to create a safer community. This is a very quick logic model of the teen outreach program that actually talks about the conditions for success. It provides the core components as well as looking at outcomes and the impact on the community. It is designed for young people all the way from age 12 all the way up through age 19. And these are skills that they can take, they can build on. It has a lot of room for the locality to tailor its curriculum to meet the needs of the community. And of course, on my last slide, our next steps is to continue to develop the partnership with youth and adolescents serving community-based organizations and to continue to support youth and adolescents serving CBOs to improve health outcome across our city. And with that, again, I thank you for your time, and I will entertain any questions that you may have.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Richardson. Are there any questions, comments? Mr. Cullen.
I have a question. Good evening, sir, and thank you for being here.
Certainly.
You spoke about the hospital-based violence intervention programs, and I'm curious, is this something that the VDH is pushing down and mandating from the hospitals, or is this something that's an initiative that's voluntary on the part of the hospitals? Or in our case, I believe there's only one hospital that would be impacted here in the city?
Well, it is not a mandate. It is one of the things that we are actually asking for coordination and cooperation on. A part of what we are doing is actually also collecting a lot of data. So right now, CHKD has been tremendous in implementing this. Centara has actually started working with some of the organizations and are doing some data sharing there. So it is not a mandate at this point, but it's something that I would love to be able to see that all healthcare providers, whether it be in Maryview that does not have a trauma center, but there are victims who will show up at Maryview, so the work could start at whatever entry point that exists.
Okay. The second question I had was, I'm hearing different components of this. The health department is doing their part, and you said the word repeatedly, they're looking at and looking into. The police department is doing their part. Parks and Rec is doing their part. Fire department's doing their part. I'm trying to figure, is there a point at which all of the stakeholders are sitting together in the same room at a regular interval to talk about your efforts and how they're aligning with each other? Is there something in place currently that's happening, like a regular synchronization meeting or something like that, where you're talking around a round table perhaps and having these discussions?
Well, those things are actually coming into view. There are a number of different initiatives that we're involved with at the health department, and as we are actually learning some of the who the key players are, is also coming alongside. In fact, Mr. Parmachuk and I actually had a conversation around this very briefly just a few months ago. Just recently learned of this commission and have actually started attending. In fact, last month was my first meeting and subsequently joined Portsmouth United as a result of that. And as we are finding out who the players are, one of the efforts we're trying to do is to reduce the amount of duplicity and to actually start collaborating, because there's a lot of resources here in the city, a lot of people doing the same thing but are not necessarily talking to each other. As looking at public health in a very holistic way, we want to not only talk with each other but work with each other in order to accomplish the outcomes that we're all hoping for.
Thank
so
you.
to answer your question fully, is that we are not completely at the table yet, but we are aligning with and trying to connect so that we can be at the table.
Right on. One of your slides said interdepartmental and intersectoral effort is needed, and I concur completely. I think that's
Yes.
a missing piece. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other, to your knowledge, any other cities or localities in Virginia that is taking steps towards the public health side of reducing crime and gun violence?
I like to think that we are unique in many ways. I'd love to tell you we are the only one. I don't know what everyone is doing with 35 different health districts. I can tell you that a part of what we value greatly is the fact that we are one of 4 nationally accredited health departments, and as a part of that, we try to look outside of the traditional lanes and try to connect. So we don't always have another, peer within VDH that we can look at to see exactly what they're doing. So sometimes we have to take the lead and run into a few brick walls along the way, but that's okay. We're thick-skinned.
Yes.
I had one more question. I'm sorry. Please, if you could educate me as somebody who worked in government in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
It says Virginia Department of Health, but it says Portsmouth Health Department. And
Yes.
can you educate me on what that is? Meaning, what is the Department of Health from the state, and as opposed to, is this a site office? Is this a funded externally? Is this something that's funded from the city? Just a little education on how that works.
Well, the Virginia Department is actually the overarching health authority for the entire state. So all of the 35 different health districts across the Commonwealth actually falls under the Virginia Department of Health. Mm-hmm. Until 2 years ago, the slide would probably say Portsmouth Health Department and actually has the City of Portsmouth logo with a sail on it. Virginia, in its rebranding effort, has required that all health districts use the VDH logo and then the district name right next to it, which is the reason why you see Portsmouth Health Department. Our funding is actually largely through the state, but we also enjoy some funding from the city as well, because there are some things that we do that are very specific and unique to the city. So therefore, we do enjoy some funding from the city and work alongside city agencies to accomplish a lot of the local initiatives and efforts here. So we're dually funded, and we have to meet requirements for both. And sometimes they're antagonistic.
Thank you. Yeah, I can imagine. And is the health district just the city of Portsmouth, this district, or is it a larger area?
No, we serve just the city of Portsmouth.
Okay.
Norfolk has its own health district. Suffolk is a part of Western Tidewater that encompasses 4 different localities. So for us, we only serve primarily the city of Portsmouth. However, we also serve anyone who walks in our door. So if someone from Chesapeake, Suffolk, Norfolk, Virginia Beach walks in our door, we're not going to turn them away because they're also part of Virginia as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? All right. Thank you, Mr. Richardson.
Okay, thank you.
All right, moving forward with our next agenda item, we've had a number of presentations that were really insightful. In our last meeting in February, we had a conversation about how important it was for us to get briefed on the number of things taking place here in Portsmouth. So I wanted to open up the floor for our commissioners to have a discussion or leave any comments on the presentations that we had today. So whoever would like to start, if there's any comment.
I have a question.
Thank you.
Sure thing. So the, and I probably should have asked this before, I apologize. The Bloomberg study plan to put together this app looks very similar to what I'm hearing is the Portsmouth United app. Those things are not going to be happening at the same time, right? It's one? Sorry, Ms. Matthews.
The Portsmouth United app is the same so the Portsmouth United app came from this same recommendation.
Right.
So I'll be getting with our folks who worked on that study to get the quotes that they have, and so we can streamline that effort.
So we're talking about one
It's going to
app.
be one app. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I think that the presentations were important in that we've been talking about how we need to know what's going on and we need to have the people in the room so we can see what efforts are being made in an effort to combine and reduce duplicity. So I think that these have been very insightful. I think it was a lot to take in, so we will review these things and discuss them and see how they can be interwoven into the things that we're doing.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes. Our City Council Liaison, Councilman Hugel.
Yeah, Chair, Committee. One item of clarification. The Bloomberg Harvard team has stood down. Okay, so I'm not sure that came through clearly to you during their presentation. The work that they did was important work. They have a huge amount of data that was baked into the Bloomberg Harvard final report that was kind of the underpinnings of the work that they did to arrive at the recommendations that they arrived at. But that team got as far as you were briefed tonight and then stopped. So one of the questions that you might want to ask, how do we get that work going again? Because it is based on data that was collected through research across the city. And with the so you remember they had 2 recommendations, kind of youth skills training and the app. Good news, the app hasn't died. The app effort has been picked up by Portsmouth United. Youth skills training, that recommendation is a recommendation that they worked on, and now that effort has paused. The other questions that they asked themselves and then put in front of you tonight around how do we engage our kids so that they're not afraid to engage in the programs that we have available? How do we convince their parents that it's okay to let their kids come out and engage in those programs? How do we get the word out about what the programs are to bring the kids and try to get them engaged in in productive activities as opposed to getting engaged in other activities? Those are all important questions that you could have asked the chief and Mr. Pomerchuk. I encourage you to think about that. If you haven't spent any time in the Bloomberg Harvard study, okay, the chief and Mr. Pomerchuk gave you a very high-level summary of the report. So, for instance, there are details in that report where they did research to identify the grassroots organizations in the community, many of whom are part of the Portsmouth United effort, some of whom are not part of the Portsmouth United effort but are still out doing work in the community. They did that work and then mapped those organizations into, well, based on what this group does, how would they fit into a plan to impact violence before it happens, while it happens, or after it happens. And that homework is all part of the final report. Now, hopefully, Portsmouth United is using that information with the grassroots organizations that they're engaged with, but that's not all of them, and they're not doing it all. Because remember, Portsmouth United is focused on the policing part of what we're talking about, the law enforcement part, and the engagement with those grassroots organizations that can help in that regard. But there are other systemic issues that you all have been asked to deal with, and grassroots organizations that plug in and can help those things outside of the things that Portsmouth United is tackling. If you go into the Bloomberg Harvard report and identify those other touch points, that I think provides for you all perhaps a starting place for how you engage with those community groups differently, or maybe in addition to how Portsmouth United is engaging in those community groups. Ultimately, you're tasking to build an overarching plan that incorporates what Portsmouth United is doing, but also addresses the other systemic issues that the Bloomberg Harvard study in fact addressed, and the community health assessment also addressed. Okay, so interesting, you had briefs tonight from both organizations. Hopefully you came away seeing the overlaps between those two efforts. Now, the overlaps weren't intentional. The community health assessment done by the health department separately from the Bloomberg Harvard study, which was done by the city manager's team in conjunction with the Bloomberg Harvard advisor that we had, helping them with data collection and ultimately the innovative work that they pulled together in their final report. But the fact, and I think Commissioner Cullen kind of was getting at that point, there's overlap between those efforts, and so navigating the overlap, figuring out how we single up instead of having multiple groups out there working. I mean, that's a big part of why you are here now, is to help us sort through where do we have those overlaps, and then importantly, where do we have gaps, because we can't afford to be spending resources doing twice as much in some areas and nothing in other areas. And so kind of back to you all to work your way through that and understand the duplications and the gaps and help us sort those out. So hopefully the briefing that you got last month and again this month have kind of helped provide you all with some high-level insight, but the real work is digging into the reports that were provided to you all to understand the details, because at the end of the day, this problem, the devil is in the details. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Hugel. Yes, go ahead.
So I have like it's a question, but I guess it's in the form of a statement. So both presentations pretty much was done like in 2021 when the spike in violence was pretty much youth, right? So in 2025, is our focus solely on youth? because most of the presentations were based off of kids, right?
No. Okay, so you're right. The problem that was identified as a problem of focus from 2021, when the Bloomberg Harvard research was done, identified the kid problem as the big problem. Well, we got other big problems, and those things are clearly have been surfacing as we have come out of the pandemic. I mean, you saw the youth violence graph that the health department presented that showed that precipitous drop-off in school violence incidents. Well, that wasn't because our kids got better. That's because we sent them home to be in school. And so they didn't have kids in school to behave violently in the classroom. So 2021 data maybe is interesting, but we're all interested in what's going on now. So for instance, Bloomberg Harvard team has stalled. You might want to resurrect that team and go back and revisit the 3 weeks of research that they did and update that research with 2025 information, because to your point, it's different now than it was 4 years ago. We've been through that dip and are digging out. And I think the fact remains that our collective behavior, yours and mine and our kids, is different now than it was before we went into the pandemic. We lost something in our ability to engage socially with each other when we all hunkered at home watching Netflix instead of going to the theaters, and hunkering at home with our family and not getting out and engaging with each other. They pointed out in the study, even back in 2021, that we had an area, particularly with our kids, where we weren't learning social skills because the parents weren't letting their kids out to engage each other socially to find a way to resolve conflict. If that's the way it was in 2021, you can bet that it's worse now, because we've been through kind of everybody hiding from each other, and now that we're back in contact with each other, we certainly weren't developing good social skills while we were in hiding. In fact, whatever social skills our kids were developing before then took a hiatus. And so I suspect that the data will show significant changes in that regard from then until now. Are those the right problems to be working on? Well, I think your instincts would tell you we still got those problems, but we got some other problems that maybe are just as big and as important now as before the pandemic. Does that help?
This is for the health department. So, I mean, I know personally substance abuse plays a big part in crime in the city of Portsmouth. So, does the health department help with trying to, like, so I know Portsmouth buys, like, I don't want to use the word beds, but they use other people's facilities in other cities and states to house some of the problems that we have here. Does the health department do that for substance abuse? Because I know it's kind of hard to get some of the people in rehab. So, or may not be enough beds available here. Does the health department get beds in maybe other states and other cities to use for the city of Portsmouth?
Well, the health department, by way of the behavioral health care services, would actually be the agency that actually does any kind of substance use. Where the health department comes in is that we help to connect people with those resources. So one of the governor's initiative from a few years back is a no wrong door approach. So therefore, if somebody comes into the care system, whether it be through the health department, behavioral health care, through social services, is to be able to connect them to those resources. So no, we don't actually have a specific number of beds per se, but if we are aware of somebody who's in need, we can help them to connect with the right resources to get the assistance that they need. And it may be through a state agency, or it could actually be through one of the other community-based organizations.
So it sounds like, based off of what Councilman Hugel shared with us, it all circles back to the committee work and making sure that we are doing our due diligence outside of this space when we meet once a month on the first Monday, and we're ensuring that we're taking the time to, whether it's researching, developing, or coming up with ideas or policies based off of what's been provided. Granted, these presentations was really important, but I think we can use what was shown and given to us as a framework as to what to do next. That Bloomberg Harvard study is really, really long, but we had a while to review it, and there's several recording presentations of it on YouTube that I've watched several times. I know many of you have as well. And so I think the next steps really would be making sure that between our commission meetings once a month, we're using that committee that we've established, those committees, to make sure we're doing that work. Councilman Tillage.
Good evening, Chair and Vice Chair and members of the task force. To Councilman Hugel's point, he's dead on what the mission here is, right? Bloomberg Harvard Group is no longer, and so if you read on page 40, was it page 44 and 40? Well, excuse me, 43 and 44 of the Harvard Bloomberg study. One of the recommendations is the creation of a ad hoc committee / task force. That's you all. So that is a recommendation from the Bloomberg study. Reading the Bloomberg study, you get the template and the understanding of what the ad hoc / task force committee is to be doing. On page 43, they list 7 bullet point items that should be the mission and purpose of this task force. On the next page, it mentions collaboration on how this committee collaborates with stakeholders internally inside of the city, as well as, and when I mean internal, I mean city workers, and then external as far as community members, churches, and other organizations. You also go down to the next page on page 45, it makes mentions to the measurements on how we are to be measuring the success of programs. You all have been briefed on a lot of different programs that we do have. A lot of this work has been made mention is going to take a lot of time outside of this 1 to 2 hours on a Monday. Committee work is very important. Reading this document is very important. It literally lays out the purpose of the task force and how we are trying to push this together. I think we kind of get stuck sometimes on the crime aspect. When I mean crime aspect, I mean the policing aspect. We have a police department, but what we don't have is we don't have the solutions to addressing poverty. We don't have the solutions to addressing healthcare disparities. We don't have the solutions to ensuring that we have safe preventions inside of our neighborhoods. Those are the things that we're looking for answers for, on how do we connect those dots in partnership with our police department. In addition, we're looking at our programs on what does our violence interruption programs look like? Are they working? Are they not working? Are we putting enough money here? Are we not putting enough money there? Do we need to roll back programs? Do we need to put programs and put them in certain neighborhoods? Looking at some of our crime maps across the city, we can be able to see where our crime is concentrated at throughout the city. Over the last week, we've had, unfortunately, 3 major shootings that have occurred throughout the city. Churchland, Douglas Park, right here in Old Town. How kind of looking into those situations, how can we work with the Old Town Business Association on securing our downtown, Old Town area? How are we going to be partnering with the neighborhoods out in Douglas Park? How are we going to be partnering with the businesses in Churchland that may not have business associations? That's kind of really, it's the overall picture on how we just connect all those dots. And so it's very imperative that we read this 40, 50-page document, because it really does outline everything that not only that they did, but also now what is now been put upon you all to do. And a lot of that work is unfortunately going to have to take place outside of this, because just getting the reports and just hearing from Ms. Matthews and hearing from city staff, this is just not going to, it's not going to get us anywhere. It's really going to take diving deep into your committees, outside of this, meeting with people throughout the city throughout the weeks, and then coming here and then having the decision and having the goals set to give to the city so that y'all can have those discussions with them, so that we can have that meaningful dialogue. So I really implore you all to please read that document. It's a lot of information, but reading is imperative. We have an attorney up here, and I know that she can tell you reading is really crucial, and I just ask you all to please do that.
Thank you, Councilman Tillage. Any other comments on the discussion on the presentations? I think that takes us right into our next and our final agenda item, which is committee updates. As we just discussed how important those committees are, making sure that over the next month before our next meeting in April that we're meeting with our committees. But I'll start off with our Data and Metrics Committee chaired by our Vice Chair, Ms. Patillo.
Thank you. I did, as many of us, well, firstly, I am working on trying to fill the committee. So we have 3 members that are highly interested, and I think they're important stakeholders in the community that would help with data and metrics. Also did, as many of the other committee members, take an in-depth read into the Harvard Bloomberg study to identify important data and metrics that are linked to the things that were discussed in the study, and also linked to some of the goals that we've been talking about as a committee. And so I'll continue to work on that as I continue to recruit members, and as we are still awaiting a response or an outcome from the RFP that was sent out. We're still continuing the work, though. We're not halting that in waiting for that. So I'm actively recruiting members. I'm actively identifying a plan for which data and metrics are important, and which are directly relevant to what we're doing. And what we got from these presentations and what we've read prior to these presentations and from the February meeting, that will be used to create a framework, as you all have suggested. So we had already discussed that, and now I think that we have the meat of what we need in order to roll the ball some more. It's rolling, but our committee, the Data and Metrics Committee, is actively recruiting members, and we are outlining data and metrics and where those things come from if they have a direct source, because a lot of these data and metrics have direct sources within the city. So we don't need to do the work of compiling certain types of data, and then some types of data, as in the study, may have to be boots on the ground type data. So we're just identifying those things, giving them a name, giving them a place within the plan that we have, and that's where we are. And we are working outside of the meeting. This is not a work session. This is a place where we come to get information and give information. So we're working outside of this meeting during the months between, and we will continue to do so. And as we are more and more equipped and more prepared, things will begin to happen, and what we present at these meetings will continue to evolve. So we appreciate the support of council and the public and those stakeholders who have presented today and who are steadily learning about our efforts and then coming to the meetings and being able to share with us what they're doing. So that is where we are for the Data and Metrics Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Patillo. Mr. Cullen with Community Engagement.
Thank you. We're currently at 3 members. We're interviewing a 4th. Present with us is Mr. Lee Deere, one of the members of our committee, who has been working with a variety of analytics programs to apply something called the Haddon Matrix, which is an analysis to look into the pre-event, event, post-event factors, both looking at the Bloomberg, I'm getting nods down there, looking at the Bloomberg study, looking at our 2023 crime prevention or crime reduction plan, and looking at pre-event, the agent, the physical environment, the social environment, and a specific breakdown to Portsmouth for potential interventions. and also looking at how can we collect data and disseminate that data into the community specifically. So he's using a variety of AI tools that make a lot of this, hopefully find some new insights on how we can approach this and how we can talk to the various members of the community. Mr. Deere is here if anybody has any, do we have a moment to let him talk about this for a second?
Are there any questions for the Community Engagement Committee? Not seeing any at the moment.
Okay,
All right.
thank you, Lee.
All right. Resource allocation, that's actually me. Resource allocation. So as previously mentioned in February, I have identified 2 individuals who have expressed interest in wanting to help with resource allocation. Their background is in research, whether at Norfolk State, but also ODU as well. In February, I also spent time following up with those community members, also other folks who have reached out sharing resources that may be helpful with this committee specifically. And so in the next couple of weeks, you can expect for me to share out a spreadsheet or some type of document with all of those resources that I've been able to compile, but also the stuff that's still coming into me as well. And I can share out at the next meeting. But of course, I will let you all know if we were to schedule any meetings in the next couple of weeks as well. And intervention, Ms. Sessoms.
Good evening, everyone. I have too made some great strides with intervention. I have one of my recruits here. One of them couldn't get access to the building. I have several. I met with PRHA, Bon Secours, Health Department, and Portsmouth Public Schools. So I have a representative from each one of those entities that are on board with being a part of the intervention committee. So I'm really excited about, jump-starting this and collecting the data so that we can provide you guys with some real information, some real data. So, excuse my voice.
Thank you, Ms. Sessoms. So it sounds like we all have identified individuals or either are still continuing to staff up our committees. So I will continue to task us with setting a meeting time to make space for our committees. So between our next commission meeting in April, making sure we're going back to review our meeting minutes from this meeting, watching the recording, and seeing what exactly we should be discussing in those committee meetings. So that way when we come back in April, we can have something of substance to discuss at our next meeting. Any comments on committees or questions? Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Chair. Vice Chair and Commission, a couple things. One is our police chief has set a goal of 20% reduction in crime overall, with a 10% reduction in violent crimes and homicides. All right, so as we're discussing what we're doing, absolutely we want to exceed that, but that has been articulated as the goals for our crime reduction. So that's one of the things that we're working toward. Secondly, consider using some of our local colleges as resources, especially for your data. I'm using ODU, Norfolk State, and a group of students that's helping me with some mine and analyze data. So that may be a resource that for the rest of your committees, you maybe want to engage our local colleges and universities as a source for some willing people who can do some of that work for you. They've really stepped up for everything that I've asked them to do, and I can't imagine that they wouldn't provide you that same kind of resource and help. They're looking particularly for some really good projects to assign to their students. So if we can help along that and also move your agenda along at the same time, I think that would be a great resource for all of your committees to reach out. If you don't have a resource, let me know and I can get you in touch with some of the resources that I've used to garner the support that I've gotten so far. So just want to bring those two things to your attention. One is, and this is really important, what our established goal is. All right, so when we're doing our work, we're working toward that goal. Okay, and we're going to keep statistics to either validate or disprove that we've made that goal, and that's how we measure our level of success or failure. It's whether we met the goal. And as we do that, please consider using some of our colleges and universities as resources for some of your work. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. And I'll second what our city manager is saying. I believe I shared in January and February as well that there are a number of folks at both Norfolk State and Old Dominion University that are willing to help, who has reached out via email and through social media. But I did have a chance to speak with the president of Norfolk State last month, Dr. Adams Gasson, about the efforts that we're making here in Portsmouth, what we're trying to do, and she affirmed that whatever we need, they're willing to do so, and that was really helpful as well. So I just wanted to make a mention of that. So thank you, Mr. Carter. Our next agenda item is announcements. Ms. Matthews, are there any announcements?
So there is a reminder about the June 7th joint meeting on your agendas. I'm sorry. June 9th, joint meeting on your agendas. There will be some additional announcements forthcoming. VCU School of Public Policy will be visiting the city in coming weeks. I'm still waiting on dates. If it happens before our April meeting, I will be sending an email out and making some phone calls to make sure you're aware.
Thank you, Ms. Matthews. Yes.
Just one item to make you all aware of. The next meeting is scheduled for April the 7th, Monday. That happens to also be a city council work session night. So we've got a conflict between council work session and you all. So we've got some work to do to straighten the calendar out. But I wanted you to be aware that we have a schedule conflict right now that we'll have to resolve. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. And we'll work with Ms. Matthews to resolve that. Okay. Thank you. Are there any other additional comments or questions? All right. Yes.
As you schedule your committee meetings, once you have like a standing schedule, please send that to me just so we have it for our records.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Matthews. All right. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
You have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you very much.